Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today we explain Prophet Samuel 1, chapter 21 in a clear and simple way, step by step. Imagine waking up one day as the absolute, undisputed hero of your entire nation, right? And then, literally the next day, you are a desperate, hunted fugitive running for your life. Well, that is exactly where we find David in this explainer. His own king, King Saul, wants him dead, and David is on the run with absolutely nothing. No food, no weapons, and no men. It's just a crazy situation.
To really grasp the intensity of this chapter, let's quickly run through our roadmap. We're going to systematically cover 1. Context and Doeg arrival, 2. Holy bread and weapons, 3. Fleeing to enemy territory, 4. Key ideas and clarifications, and finally 5. Practical lessons and recap. We won't rush this, so let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1. Context and noble arrival. We are picking up the story right as David has just fled from the court of King Saul. Saul's jealousy has hit a total boiling point, and David's life is in immediate mortal danger. He has had to leave absolutely everything behind just to survive.
So, establishing the who and where, David arrives at the priestly city of Nob. He goes directly to Ahimelech, the priest. But listen to Ahimelech's reaction in this text. It says Ahimelech trembled when he met him. Why? Well, think about it. David is a high-ranking military commander. He's the king's own son-in-law. A guy of David's immense stature simply doesn't travel without an armed escort or a huge entourage. So the fact that he shows up completely alone, that immediately alarms Ahimelech. It's a huge red flag that something is terribly wrong, and the priest instantly senses the danger.
Which brings up the immediate narrative tension. Why is David alone, and what is his secret mission? Ahimelech is scared, and David needs to defuse that fear quickly, all while hiding his true status as a wanted fugitive. So, what does he do? He completely fabricates a story. He looks the priest in the eye and lies, claiming he's on an urgent, highly classified secret mission directly from King Saul.
Let's break down exactly what David is saying here in verse 2. He tells Ahimelech that the king's business required such extreme haste that he had to leave immediately, without grabbing any provisions, and that he has instructed his men to meet him at some hidden, predetermined location. By spinning this story, David accomplishes two massive things for his basic survival. First, he explains away why he's standing there alone and unarmed, and second, by making it a secret mission from the king, he deliberately keeps Ahimelech in the dark. He's effectively protecting the priest from becoming a knowing accomplice to a fugitive.
Let's move on and see how this builds in Part 2, Holy Bread and Weapons. David is facing a really desperate need right now. He's got a plausible cover story, but he urgently has to address his most pressing physical needs, which are starvation and complete vulnerability.
David asks Ahimelech, "Now then, what have you on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread or whatever you can find." The priest replies that, well, he doesn't have any ordinary bread. He only has consecrated bread. But there's a catch. The priest says David can have it, provided his men have kept themselves ritually clean from women. David quickly reassures him, basically saying, yes, absolutely, the men's bodies are holy, especially on a mission like this. So as verses 3 through 6 outline, the physical exchange takes place. Ahimelech actually hands over the holy food to a starving man.
Let's quickly demystify the specific terms so you know exactly what David is eating. Consecrated bread, you might also hear it called the bread of the presence, is a very specific offering. Fresh, hot loaves were placed continually before the Lord in the sanctuary. When they were swapped out for fresh ones, those older loaves were considered holy and were strictly reserved for the priest to eat. Nobody else. So by giving this sacred bread to David, Ahimelech is making an incredible, almost unheard of exception because of the absolute life or death urgency of David's supposed mission.
Now, what's really interesting about this moment is, right in the middle of this tense exchange, the text introduces a completely unexpected and ominous character. Verse 7 zooms in on a bystander. A man named Doeg the Edomite is just sitting right there, detained in the sanctuary. It's this incredibly looming dark presence.
We really need to emphasize the textual detail here. Doeg isn't just anybody. He is King Saul's chief herdsman. He's literally one of the king's top servants. And he silently witnesses the entire exchange. He sees David arrive alone, he hears the fabricated story, and he watches the priest give David provisions. This plants a huge, critical seed of danger in the narrative. Even though we are just focusing on the literal events here, the Peshat meaning, we instantly know that Doeg's presence in that room is going to spell absolute disaster later.
All right, having secured food, David addresses his next critical need. He asks Ahimelech, "Don't you have a spear or sword here?" He leans into the lie, claiming his mission was so incredibly urgent he couldn't even grab a weapon. The priest replies in verses 8 and 9 with this mind-blowing piece of information. The sword of Goliath the Philistine, yes, the very giant David himself killed in the valley of Elah, is right there in the sanctuary. David is flooded with relief. He says, "There is none like it, give it to me." I mean, talk about a turnaround. He goes from being completely defenseless to wielding the ultimate trophy of his greatest victory.
The text notes that the sword is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. To define that in simple English, an ephod is a sacred, ornate linen garment worn by the priests of Israel when they ministered. You see, the sanctuary at Nob served as a sort of national repository for great historical relics, so tucked away behind this sacred garment in this holy space of worship, the massive weapon of the defeated enemy was safely stored. And now it is back in David's hands.
So, the crucial point is, this brings us to part 3, fleeing to enemy territory. David now has bread and he has a sword, but he is still in Israelite territory, where Saul's reach is absolute. He has to make a drastic move, and this takes us to the total climax of the chapter. Just track his frantic geographical movements on a timeline with me for a second, because it shows how wild this shift is. Just days prior, he was a respected commander in Saul's court. Earlier today, he was desperately gathering supplies at Nob under a false identity. And now, in the present moment, verse 10 tells us he flees to Achish, the king of Gath. He has completely shifted his environment. He has left Israel entirely. But David's plan backfires immediately. He walks right into the stronghold of the Philistines. When we read verses 10 and 11, we see that the servants of Achish instantly recognize him. They don't just see a random refugee, they see their worst nightmare walking through the front door. They even quote the famous Israelite victory song, "Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands." By singing this, they blow his cover entirely and expose his true identity, putting his life in immediate extreme peril.
Think about the terrifying contrast here. The Philistines viewed David as Israel's greatest military champion, literally a mass slayer of their own people. But his current reality? He is a miserable, desperate fugitive who is simply seeking asylum. And think about the brilliant irony of this moment. He is walking into Gath, which is a Philistine city. Do you know who was famously from Gath? Goliath. It is absolutely terrifying to realize that David is standing in Goliath's hometown seeking refuge, while literally carrying Goliath's own giant sword. It's almost unbelievable.
So what does he do? Verse 12 says David took their words to heart and was very afraid. He's trapped. He obviously can't fight an entire city, so he improvises wildly. Verses 13 through 15 detail his physical actions. He pretends to be completely insane. He scratches marks on the doors of the city gate, and he literally lets saliva run down his beard. He completely degrades himself. King Achish looks at him in utter disgust, says, "Am I short of madmen?" and just dismisses him.
Let's pause the step-by-step walk for just a moment and move into part 4, key ideas and clarifications. A lot just happened really fast, and we want to ensure we fully grasp the foundational context and the specific, literal actions that just went down.
Now you might be wondering this very reasonable question. Why on earth did David flee directly to the Philistines, his greatest enemies? The text clarifies this through his actions. David's desperation was so absolute, and his fear of Saul's network of spies was so incredibly deep, that running into enemy territory actually felt safer than remaining anywhere near King Saul. He was really just hoping he could blend in as an anonymous mercenary or a harmless beggar. And this brilliantly illustrates what chapter 21 is truly about. This explainer is covering a literal narrative of extreme survival. If we focus purely on the peshat level, the literal actions taken, David bends the strict rules of the sanctuary to eat holy bread. He arms himself with the sword of his fallen enemy, and when cornered, he completely abandons his pride and dignity, pretending to be a madman. Survival absolutely trumped everything else.
Which brings us to part 5, practical lessons and recap. Let's extract some simple, practical life lessons derived directly from the literal events we've just covered together. What can we actually take away from all this?
First, desperation forces difficult choices. David had to lie to protect himself and the priest. Second, resourcefulness is absolutely key in a crisis. He used whatever was at hand, consecrated bread and an old dusty sword. Third, great past victories can be a double-edged sword. Slaying Goliath gave David a weapon, but that exact same fame almost got him killed in Gath. And finally, survival sometimes requires setting aside our pride. David, the anointed king and great warrior, literally drooled on his beard just to stay alive. These are incredibly grounding, practical takeaways from his journey.
Let me leave you with this provocative summary thought. Look at David in this chapter. When all our resources, our comforts, and our fancy titles are totally stripped away, what are we willing to do to survive and protect our future? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.